right, it's 2 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern. Let's get started. Ruth, chapter 1, verse number 1. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges judged that there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judea, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The opening verse, guys, locks the events of the book of Ruth into a period of what we call the major judges and the minor judges. Othniel, Ehud, Shamgar, Deborah, Barak, Gideon, Joel, Jair, Jephthah, Ibzan, Elon, Abdon, and Samson. So the events of Ruth are locked in to those 13 judges. Now, this event, the book of Ruth, takes some place during what's called the Late Bronze Age, which is 1550 BC to 1200 BC, somewhere in there, or maybe in what we would call Iron Age 1, early Iron Age 1. Iron Age 1 is 1200 to 1000 BC. So somewhere within that ballpark. How long did those 13 judges rule for? How long did they judge for? Well, we don't know the whole period of time, but according to this verse in Judges chapter 11, verse 26, the combined duration of all of the judges would have been 300 years from the time of Joshua to the time of the 9th judge, Jephthah. And we know that from Judges 11:26, which says, while Israel lived in Heshbon, Heshbon is right over here, right in this area right here, right in Moab. Okay, right there. So while Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, and Arar and its villages,
That's Moab. That high? I thought it was down at the bottom of the
No. The boundaries of Moab, the southern boundaries of Arnon. This is a big, huge, deep kind of Grand Canyon kind of shaped cavern. This splits Moab in half. So this is Moab up here, and then this is Moab down there.
So it is down there.
And all the cities that are on the banks of the Arnon, which I just pointed out, 300 years. Okay, so in other words, from the time Joshua enters into the land until the time of the 9th judge, Jephthah, about 300 years. Now, famines, which we're reading about in verse number 1. Famines hit no one harder in the world of the Bible than the shepherd and the farmer. The shepherd, you're looking at like an 18th century photo of a Bethlehemite, a little shepherd boy around David's age, right when he killed Goliath. So no one hits famines harder than these guys, and then these guys. Here's the same thing, 18th, 19th, probably 19th century Arab man working the field, and not much has really changed there. And since in the beginning until just 100 years ago, not much has changed. It's still rudimentary equipment, no tractors, beasts of burdens, their dress is the same, their food's the same, everything's pretty much the same except the last 100 years. So famines we're reading about in verse number 1, they hit nobody harder than those 2 occupations, the major professions, the major contributors to the world of the Bible's economy. Now, also, famines hit no one harder than people like those who lived in Bethlehem. Because Bethlehem is right on the seam of the desert and the sown land. The desert land and then the sown land. So, you can see on the map, Bethlehem is located right on Highway 5. That main north-south route that covers the whole country. And it hooks up Beersheba all the way up north of Jerusalem to Shechem, and Bethlehem's right on the edge of that. Now, this is the first recorded famine in Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. This is the first recorded famine since the great famine that took place during the time of Joseph, which would have been probably like 500 something years ago. Ancient Bethlehem is identified with modern Bethlehem, which is about, you can see Jerusalem on the map, as well as Bethlehem. It's about 3 miles south of Jerusalem. Okay? You can walk from there to there in about an hour and a half. Now, like I mentioned, the site is located right on what's called the Patriarchal Highway, It's called the Patriarchal Highway because it connected Beersheba and Hebron and Shechem, all of these Abraham, Isaac, Jacob kind of famous cities, right on Highway 5. It's just like saying San Diego, Bakersfield's not on Highway 5. You know, Sacramento, Redding, Portland, Seattle, there's all on Highway 5, all those major cities. And so are these, all the main route going to the main place. Is it hot here or is it just me?
Just you.
Okay.
It's comfortable.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay. So, the site's about 2,600 feet above sea level. What are we here?
400.
About 400, so maybe something like up in Manton, right? Up in those mountains right there. It's kind of the elevation of Bethlehem. In regards to water, there's a really, really fine well right outside of Bethlehem. That's the well that was used in antiquity, no doubt. And there's no springs in the modern town, and there's no rivers really. So when famine strikes, and all you have to drink, right, is water that's been stored or tapped in the earth, right, things can get really, really bad really quick. Cisterns were used. Cisterns. What's a cistern? When you read in the Bible, you know, like Joseph was thrown into a pit. Don't think of like just some man or God-made pit and the earth opened up, right? It's a human dug, depending on the depth and the width, and you would pitch or grade your property so all of the rain would flow in that direction, and then that pit you dug, you'd do the equivalent of cementing it to keep the good water in and the bad water out. Okay. And in Israel, it only rains half the year, kind of like here. Like you can sit and watch a wedding, it's not going to rain May, June, July, August, September. Not going to happen. Okay. But come October, maybe November, for sure, this is our rainy season, just like in Israel. Okay. So when you're not living by the Jordan River, which they're not, and you're not living by any springs, which they're not, you know, the only thing, I mean, they don't take baths in the world of the Bible. You just don't do it. And if you did take a bath, it would have to be in living water. That's Jewish law. Like you couldn't take a bath in that pond right there. Well, maybe you could, because there's water flowing into it, obviously from somewhere. So you could probably bathe in there if you wanted to. Okay, or you can go on a canoe ride, whatever floats your boat. Okay. So, but in Bethlehem, they're not really near anything like that. So you don't take a bath. Every morning, what you do is you wash your face. When I lived with monks in the wilderness, it's scary. But we did okay, because no one can hear you scream out there. You're at their total mercy. But they were very kind to me. They liked me a lot. But anyways, and they don't take any baths. Every morning what you do is you wash your hands and your feet, like Peter says to Jesus, right, in the upper room discourse. Remember that? 2 or 3 are nodding. Good, yeah. Because that's what you normally do. You wash your hands and your feet and your face, and that's all you do every day. Okay? Archaeologists have never found a toothbrush in the world of the Bible. Okay? And, by the way, your scent, right, was the more formidable, the better, you know? Because that's how Isaac knew the difference between Jacob and Esau when he was blind, remember? He goes, smells like Esau, you know, the man of the field, you know, so that's, you don't take showers, they don't wear Axe, you know? You just, you know, you smell like you smell and you own it, you know? Okay? So you picture, you grade your property so all the water drains into here, and that's where you get the bulk of your daily life, boiling water, cooking water, kind of splash yourself, right? Kind of water. Totally different than our world. Now, did someone have a question?
No.
Or a comment?
Not anymore.
Okay. All right. Bethlehem and the adjacent territory of Bethlehem, they were capable of producing really good crops. Because remember, in the world of the Bible, you're in an agrarian culture. What's the word I'm looking for? Agriculturally based world. And so you have, in this picture right here from Israel, just an example of the possibilities that exist there. Wheat and barley especially. We'll read about that a little bit later in chapter 2. And also sycamore trees around this region. Here's a sycamore tree. That's from Tekoa, where Amos was from. And remember, Amos was a shepherd or a farmer of sycamore trees. Something like that.
Is that like a fruit?
Yeah, it's a fig.
That's where things come from.
That's maybe where figs come, possibly where some figs come from. So here's Bethlehem right here, and then that star right here, that's Tekoa. So it's just 3 miles away, 4 miles away, just bing, bang, boom.
Sycamore trees are possibly where figs come from, or the area that the trees are from.
Both. Figs come from dates, palm trees, and
Yeah.
also sycamore trees.
Alright. Alright.
Yep.
I got you.
Okay, still, the region of Bethlehem, it was more likely to support the livelihood, the profession of shepherds, more than farmers. 1 Samuel 16:1. Samuel said to Jesse, "Are these not the children?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest, and behold, he is tending the sheep." Okay, so a region, a hub of shepherding, for sure. Now, the city of Bethlehem was named after a person named Bethlehem. And it's mentioned in 1 Chronicles chapter 2, verses 50 and 51. And Bethlehem was the third born son of Caleb. You know Joshua and Caleb, of course. By the way, Caleb, his name means like a hunting dog. A hunting dog, something like that. In the world of the Bible, dogs are unclean. That's why in Revelation, outside the city of New Jerusalem, first thing are dogs. Because in the world of the Bible, they're like the garbage men, right? You just throw food out the window, or when Jehu came and he said, "Throw her down," and they threw Jezebel down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the walls and on the horses, and he trode her underfoot. And he came in and he ate and drank, and he said, "Go see now this cursed woman and bury her, for she's the king's daughter." And they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands, because the dogs ate her whole body. So, dogs, no good. Okay? But Caleb, it means like a hunting dog. Like he's on the hunt, he's sniffing after, he's sniffing after God. He's hot on God's heels, kind of, okay? So Bethlehem, he's the third born son of Caleb, and Caleb's the son of Hur. Hur is like one of the guys who held up Moses' arm, right? Remember that story? Okay. Now the city of Bethlehem, it's first mentioned in the Bible as the site where Rachel, the wife of Jacob, died and was buried. And that is that's the tomb of Rachel, but it's not. So that's an Ottoman period, which means 1517 to 1917 AD. An Ottoman period, Nebi. Nebi is an Arabic word, which means tomb, a tomb. The tomb of Rachel. Okay. Maybe it's built on top of what was once Rachel's tomb, who knows? But anyways, that's the first time Bethlehem is mentioned in the Bible. Now, the site, of course, is not to be confused with the other Bethlehem. There's another Bethlehem way up in the territory, as you can see here, of Zebulun. Because, of course, Bet is the Hebrew word for house, and Lechem means bread. So, that's all it literally means. So the bread of life, Jesus, the bread of life, came from the house of bread. A very nice kind of, saying. And so because it is the house of bread, therefore it's notorious for being able to possibly produce lots of wheat and barley. Kind of like in the region of Judah, which is the heartland of the country, along with Hebron, those regions, right, were responsible for baking bread, right, for the heart of the country, so to speak. Okay, now, Elimelech, we read about him in verse number 1. Elimelech, the Israelite, why did he go to Moab? And what you're looking at here is you're standing on top of the Herodium, which is one of the 5 fortresses here at the Great Bill. But anyways, the Herodium is like right in the shadows of Bethlehem. So this is what Elimelech would have looked at in verse number 1. He's here, right? And he wants to go to the Purple Mountains of Moab. Okay? So as the crow flies, it's only 15 or 20 miles, just in a straight line. But you can't go in a straight line. All right? It's a torturous, rugged path. And there's lions in here, and jackals and bears. Right? David said when he's a shepherd boy, he kills a lion and he killed a bear. Right? He probably grabbed the lion right here, by its mane, right? And then either clubbed it to death or just ripped it in half, right? Like Samson did. Okay? So he's here and he wants to go over there. Well, he probably had relatives that lived over there. right? That's why he would go there. And Genesis 19:37. And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab. So this, of course, we back up a little bit. And the younger said unto the firstborn, Come, let us make our father drink wine this night, and we will go in and lie with him, that we may have seed of our father. And the firstborn went in and got her father drunk and lay with him, and he knew not when she rose up or when she came down. And then the second one did the same, and then Lot gets both of his daughters pregnant. Okay? So his first daughter bears Moab. Okay? It was obviously Mo, Ab means father, and Mo, it means like my father. That's what it means, my father. The people of my father. Okay? So maybe Elimelech has relatives, right, who are, because the Moabites are related to the Israelites. Because Lot's an Israelite, so they both come from, right, the same stock of people. Now, even if there wasn't anyone from Elimelech's family in Moab, at this time, there was Israelite tribes right in this region, okay? People who are friendly to you, not hostile enemies. So this is one possible route he could have taken, but I doubt he took that route because it's the least direct route. So he's going right here, as you can see, and so he has people from the tribe of Reuben, right, if he's going this way, if he's going that way, that he's going through friendly territory the whole way. Okay? Verse number 2. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his two sons Malchon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah, and they came into the country of Moab and continued there. It is only natural that the family headed east, since number one, Bethlehem is an eastern-oriented city. Okay, each city purposefully has an orientation. For example, like Samaria, which is like right there. Its front door opens that way. Because the founder of Samaria is Omri, who's the father of Ahab, and Ahab and Jezebel, right? They get married. And so not only is there, well, there's a political, and there's a religious, and there's an economic pact between now this city and that city, okay? And this city is like par excellence maritime adventures up and down the coast, okay? So they're going to open their front door's open that way, because you just go right down 44 or whatever, you know, and you hook up to 80, right? And 80 takes you right to Cairo, okay? Whereas, so they're western oriented. Bethlehem's an eastern oriented city. And of course, theologically, it fits nicely because east in the Bible is always the direction of exile and punishment and judgment. Always. Every time the word east is used, you know, you should kind of have that on your radar. Like right off the bat, Genesis chapter 3. So he drove out the man and he placed it to the east of the Garden of Eden, the cherubim. Right, two angels guarding the glory of God. Right, pushed out, by the way. You have two angels outside the Garden of Eden guarding the glory of God. Right? Just like you have two angels on top of the Ark of the Covenant guarding the glory of God. Just like you have two angels outside of Jesus' tomb guarding the glory of God. Right? There's something going on there. So, east means judgment, Genesis 11, Tower of Babel. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, like, uh-oh, something's going to happen, right? They found a plain in the land of Shinar and dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make us a city in the tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. And the Lord came down, judgment. Genesis 13, right? Lot lifts up his eyes towards the east, beholds all the plain of Sodom and Gomorrah, boom, judgment, right? Shekinah glory departs from the temple, goes to the east. Jesus comes from the east. Right? His foot shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. Jesus says, so the lightning comes from the east to the west. Messiah always comes from east. Judgment's east. Okay. That's why people in America, up until just recently, every tombstone was oriented to the east. Right? Because that's where the sun rises, right? Yeah. That's where the sun rises, and that's the direction the Son of God comes, and you want to like see it, you know, so you get buried that way. Okay. Now, the most natural route from Bethlehem, so Bethlehem's right here where the whatchamacall is, right, was not this way, down all the way through, it's this way, right here, that route right there, okay? That route right there. Now that route has a name, it's kind of like a 273, and it's called the Ascent of Ziz, Z-I-Z. It's right here in 2 Chronicles 20:16. Tomorrow, go down against them. Behold, they will come up by the ascent of Ziz, Z-I-Z. And that's what you got to go through.
The second Chronicles 23.
2 Chronicles 20:16, right there. That's torturous to go through. There are very experienced Bedouin women and young men who ride camels and whatever all the time, that they'll fall to their deaths. And they're very experienced, right? They'll fall to their deaths like this. Now, in this region, it only rains 2 inches a year. That's it. 2 inches a year. And what do you think the number one cause of death is?
Dehydrated.
Drowning.
What?
It's drowning. Because what happens is, right here's Highway 5, the watershed bridge of the patriarchal highway, right? Where Hebron and Beersheba and Shechem and Jerusalem are on, right? With me? Right, it's called the watershed bridge because it's right. So all the water that hits that drains to the Mediterranean Sea, okay? Or it drains to the Dead Sea, like the roof of a house, okay? And what happens is even though it only rains 2 inches a year there, which is here, right? Here, it rains 24 inches a year, okay? So when it's raining here, it's not raining here. When it's snowing here, Josephus, the first century Jewish historian, said when it's snowing in Jerusalem, in Jericho you're wearing linen, like you're at the pool. And it's only 15 miles away. So what happens is the rain hits here, and it flies down those deep V-shaped canyons. And it's sunny, you don't even know it's cloudy, and you don't even know the rain's coming, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just boom! If you're down in the canyon walking, which is the easiest route to take, you don't want to walk up and down the ridges the whole way. You just want to take the straight path right to the canyon, right? Just wipes you out. Okay, so that's the route they had to take. Now, let's continue. They probably, after going down the ascent of Ziz, they would have landed here on the western shores of the Dead Sea, and they probably would have crossed here. Right here, the Lasan, right here, it means tongue, a tongue. This is the lowest place on earth. Okay? You can see the tongue on that map of the Dead Sea too. Alright, it's super, super shallow there. You can just walk across, pretty much. Or maybe even take a boat if you had to. Okay? So that's what they probably crossed. And then, let's move on to Elimelech in verse number 2. His name means, my God is king. My God is king. Because El is a form of Elohim, for God, and Melech means king. So, my God is the king. And this is his name is probably indicative or hopeful of the dream to live under a theocracy. God is king, not Saul, not anyone else, right? That God is king. Now, according to Jewish tradition, that's all it is. It's just tradition. You can take it for what it's worth, but there might be something to it. Elimelech's brother was not John Salmon, but Salmon. Okay? Salmon. Now, Salmon was like a ruler, a head honcho in the tribe of Judah. Okay? And his father, Salmon's father, was the father of Boaz and wife of Rahab the harlot. So, what does that mean? That means it's probable that Elimelech, who we're reading about in verse number 2, that Boaz, who we read about later, is his nephew. He's dead, but it's his nephew. That's why the whole kinsman redeemer thing we read about in chapter 3 and chapter 4, right? That's how it can happen, because they're related. So, Boaz, who we'll read about later, Boaz's mother was Rahab the harlot. Okay? And since his mother was Rahab the harlot, then it lends towards placing the book of Ruth, right, closer to the conquest of Joshua, right, than later than the conquest, doesn't it? Because Rahab has to be alive, right? She has to be alive to give birth to her firstborn son Boaz, who's like the leading man, right, in the book. Elimelech's clan, in the world of the Bible, everyone belonged to a clan or a tribe, something like that. Elimelech's clan is identified as hailing from Ephrata. Ephrata. What does that mean? Well, Ephrata, it literally means the place of fruitfulness, the place of fruitfulness, i.e. shepherd, goat, agriculturally based kind of place. Okay? Now, Bethlehem's previous name, the former name of Bethlehem, was Ephrata. We see that in Genesis 35:19. And Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrata, which is Bethlehem. So, someone probably, well, either two things happen. Either Moses writes this and someone comes in later and updates it to give it a modern place name, right? Or Moses is using the old name of Bethlehem, right? Just because maybe people know it by both names. Something like that. Okay, so that's what in verse number 2, Ephrata means, the former name of Bethlehem. Okay. Verse number 3. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. So after sojourning or wandering for some time, he dies, and on his death, in the words of the Bible, there was probably a 7-day mourning period for Elimelech. Genesis 50:10, for example. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan. They lamented there with a very great and sorrowful lamentation. This is for Jacob. And he observed, there it is, 7 days mourning for his father. So it was probably the custom to mourn for 7 days. Just like if you read in between the lines, it was probably the same thing happening back in Genesis chapter 5. Because in Genesis chapter 5, it says, and the Lord said unto, stay with me here. And the Lord said unto Noah, come thou and all the house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by twos, the male and his female, of fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and his female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. For yet 7 days I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Why is there a 7-day delay? Because remember, in the world of the Bible, names mean something, right? Names have weight to them. And Methuselah, his name literally means his death shall bring. His death shall bring. His death shall bring what? The flood, probably. So the flood's not going to come until Methuselah dies. So Methuselah dies, right? Then there's a 7-day period of mourning. Then they go into the ark and God shuts him in. It's probably what happened. And I'm sure they brought his body with them in the ark and then buried it when they landed wherever they landed. Okay? Customs, mannerisms, these kind of things they do, way back then, they don't change. They really don't change, So, upon the untimely, and it was untimely, the untimely death of Elimelech, according to the custom, also the face of the deceased would have been covered with a cloth, and the hands and the feet were bound with a linen cloth as well. We see that in John 11:44. The man, speaking of Lazarus, the man who had died came forth, there it is, bound, hand and foot, with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with a cloth. Okay? So you can kind of just imagine it in your mind's eye. The person dies. They probably anoint his body with essential oils, something like that. Like Nicodemus brings like a talent of essential oils to put on Jesus' body, right? You prep the body, and you wrap it up in the linen, like we see here, and then you put them on the equivalent of a stretcher, right? And you bring them from point A to point B, which is their family vault. Then you put them in the vault, you seal the vault, and then you lament, you mourn for 7 days, and then you come back exactly 1 year to the date, break the seal, and this would be more towards the time of Jesus. the custom changed. You'd undo the linen, take the bones, and then you put the bones in a bone box. And the bone box would be no bigger, probably like a quarter of the size or half the size of this desk right here. Okay, if you were like Herod the Great who's filthy rich, right, you'd have a sarcophagus for yourself this big. But everyone else, it's just as big as the biggest bone in the body. If you were just like that big or that high, right, it's made of Cenomanian Jerusalem limestone, right, you decorate it a little bit with like a dragon on it or something like that, or, you know, some pinwheels or stars or whatever you wanted, right, and you'd write your name on it, put your bones in there, and then there you go. Okay. Now, the body, well, I already talked about that. Let's stick to verse number 3. Though she is not yet qualified, Naomi, though she's not yet qualified to be a widow indeed, because you read about that, right, in Timothy? Like 1 Timothy 5:5, a widow indeed. What does that even mean, a widow indeed? It means, well, maybe I'll answer my question here. She's not a widow indeed because she had the safety net and the network and protection and provision of her 2 living sons. So when you read in Timothy, a widow indeed, that means a lady whose husband, for whatever reason, has abandoned her, or died, or he's off to the military, or whatever, and she has no sons to support her. Okay? So she's not there yet. So Naomi, whose name means sweet, here she begins her transformation into Mara, which she calls herself in verse number 20, which means bitter. Okay? She's beginning to turn from sweet to bitter. Verse number 4. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Arpah, and the name of the other Ruth, and they dwelt there about 10 years. So, being strangers, which they are, Israelites, they're being strangers in a strange land, without the influence of their father, the patriarch, the deal maker, etc. Naomi's sons quickly marry, and they quickly marry very, very, very distant relatives. Okay? You can pick which one you want to be Ruth, or Naomi, or Orpah. Okay? I'll take the one on the left. Alright. Now, Orpah, her name means gazelle, a gazelle. And Ruth, her name means friendship. So they marry these 2 Moabite girls right away in order, why? Well, to establish relations, to establish rights, to establish protection in